Okay, we're just going to have a short video to go over some of the points on a microscope. We've already talked about it in class a little bit, but just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So as we're going through this video, you guys can pause it at any time. You can rewind it at any time, break it up as much as you want. But just some few points on microscopes as we get into chapter number 2 here. So there are 4 basic types of microscopes that we need to be aware of. The first one is a simple microscope. It has only one lens. This is the first type of microscope that was used, and these microscopes can be quite powerful depending on the shape of that lens, but they can also be something as simple as a magnifying glass. So that's basically what a simple microscope is. It uses one lens at one time. A compound microscope, like ones we'll be using a lot in class, use 2 or more lenses lined up. So those 2 lenses will be in unison with each other, increasing the magnification. The scopes that we use in class magnify around 400 times. Some of these can magnify up to 2,000 times. But the big thing with the compound microscope is the objects that you look at, they have to be very thin and 2-dimensional so that light can pass through them. Okay, so every time we use the compound microscope in class, we'll have objects on a slide. And again, the things that you're looking at have to be thin and 2-dimensional so that light can go through them. So you can't stick your hand under your compound microscope and look at it. It'll just look dark. Okay, the third type of microscope is a stereo microscope. These have less magnification than a compound scope, but they give you the ability to look at 3-dimensional objects that light does not pass through. Okay, so this is one where you could stick your hand or any sort of random object underneath it, and you could magnify it. Again, you won't be able to magnify it to the point of seeing cells, but you can get a much closer look at them. Stereo microscopes are at times called dissection scopes because you can dissect small things underneath while using a stereo microscope. The fourth and final type of microscope that we're going to talk about are electron microscopes. Okay, electron microscopes use a beam of electrons to magnify 3D objects up to 10 million times. So that's kind of confusing, but it actually shoots a beam of electrons at objects, and then when those electrons bounce off of it, it is able to collect an image. So that's obviously a very powerful one. That's not one that we have at school because they're very expensive. But here are some microscopes. The first one in the top left is a compound microscope. Very similar to what we will use in class. Okay, right below this image, okay, so here's a compound scope. And then this is similar to what you will see when you're looking through your compound scope in class. Okay, these are actually plant cells that you're looking at here. So just a quick note, when you're looking through here, there's always going to be this black line that's in the middle. All right, that black line right there is the pointer. Okay, that's part of the microscope. So typically what you want to do if you want to look at something at a higher power is you want to make sure that the pointer right there, the end of the pointer, is on that object. Because when you zoom in, it's going to cut out part of the outside of the image. So if you were trying to look at something, if you're trying to look at this X here, and then you zoomed in to a higher power, that X would no longer be in your field of vision. So always use that pointer as like a middle part of the image you're looking at. Okay, the next type of microscope is the one in the bottom right. Okay, this is a stereoscope. Again, you can look at 3-dimensional objects with this. You won't be able to see cells, but you can see objects that light cannot pass through. Okay, up here, these are some hairs that are put underneath the stereo microscope. So you can get a good close look at them. Things are very interesting underneath the stereo microscope. It's very fun to use, but it just doesn't have the power that a compound scope does. And then in the middle, this large contraption that is an electron microscope. So you would put your images or your objects actually inside of this tall thing here at the bottom. That's where the electrons go through. And then the computer would then analyze all the data and you'd get to see your images on the computer screen. So you could put an ant in there and look at the image up very closely like that. Okay, so again, a compound microscope, stereo microscope, and an electron microscope. Of course, the one that's not on here is a simple scope, which would be something like a magnifying glass. Okay, again, you can pause this, review this as much as you need, but that's our information on microscopes.